Hello and welcome back to the Frogs of War podcast. I'm Anthony North. That's Russ Hodges. We're back to talk all things TCU athletics. And folks, it is March Madness. The madness has begun. We're recording Thursday night, and the games of the day have already shown why the NCAA tournament is simply the best. We'll get into a preview of TCU's contest Friday night against Arizona State. And a quick look back at the Big 12 tournament performance from the Horned Frogs before maybe talking a little bit of baseball and tennis and volleyball if there's time at the end. But our focus here, it's the NCAA tournament. And Russ, how are you doing tonight, and how is your bracket doing?
I'm doing pretty well tonight. The bracket is not doing so well. I think I'm 5 for 12 at the moment after Texas beat Colgate. So I'm getting killed in the 8-9 matchups and the 7-10 matchups. I think Missouri was the only one I got right. Virginia, West Virginia, heartbreaking losses there, and then Arizona screwing the pooch against Princeton. That basically destroyed my whole bracket. I had Arizona in the championship game, so any chances I have of winning a pool are essentially over with, unless Kansas can win it all. So the bracket's not doing so hot. I've made a note when I get to the office tomorrow. I have a paper bracket hanging up at my desk. That's going in the trash. I'm getting my scissors out, cutting that thing up as soon as I get back to the office. So brackets, maybe I'll catch some heat later on in this tournament and win some picks back, but it's not pretty at the moment.
No, it's a wild day so far. That Virginia Furman game earlier in the day was fantastic. West Virginia took a big early lead against Maryland and then ended up losing in the end. Just really exciting contest already. My bracket is similarly just completely trash, total garbage, and currently sitting in about 14 millionth place on ESPN, getting absolutely trounced by my 7-year-old. He's got, I guess, 10 or 11 of these correct so far already on the day. I have 5 or 6. So yeah, it's been a bad day. We should bring him on. He clearly knows what he's doing with the basketball more than I do. But and yeah, the Arizona contest, sometimes you hate to see it. A lot of karma there. I think those fans have been talking quite a lot for the past year about TCU and their controversial victory over the Horned Frogs in the second round in the 2022 season. So, for them to go ahead and take an early exit at the hands of Princeton, they can go ahead and enjoy the rest of this tournament from the couch, and that's just fine. And maybe we'll be seeing them in the future in some future Big 12. Maybe they'll come join the conference here. Don't want to talk too much about how bad the Pac-12 might be, because TCU does have a Pac-12 opponent coming up that will certainly not be an easy contest. But before we get into looking ahead at TCU's opponents and the rest of the NCAA tournament and the Big 12 and everything, a look back at the Big 12 tournament performance from the Horned Frogs. TCU opened against 3-seed Kansas State, who ended up earning a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament as well. And TCU really took it to those Wildcats. One of the best shooting nights of the season for the Horned Frogs. Chuck O'Bannon, 22 points, matched by Mike Miles with 22 as well. Really just an absolutely uncharacteristic shooting performance. I mean, TCU is one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country and really caught fire in Kansas City in that first game. What was your takeaway from that Kansas State win to open the Big 12 tournament, Russ?
Well, it was a big game, I think, for seeding purposes for the NCAA tournament. We talked about what kind of seed TCU could get, talked about the possibility of earning a 5 seed. We felt that maybe if TCU won this game, they could secure a 5 seed, and obviously that didn't wind up being the case with TCU winning and still falling a little bit short of that 5 line. But it was a really impressive performance all the way around, and the Frogs were getting after it on the glass. They killed Kansas State in the rebounding category, and Chuck O'Bannon in this game was the old Chuck. that we saw last season against Arizona. This was the kind of performance that we're not going to expect Chuck O'Bannon to score 20 plus every game, but last season he was a difference maker for TCU in that he was one of the most consistent three-point shooters the team had. And it just hasn't really happened for him on a consistent basis this year. He's hit some big shots in games throughout the year. He had a big shot against Baylor. He hit some big shots against Mississippi State. But there have just been too many games where he just hasn't gotten into a rhythm, and he's come off the bench in certain games. He started. It's been a tough year for him just in terms of continuity. You know, for a sixth-year senior, kind of figuring out what his role is going to be on this version of the TCU Horned Frogs. And for him to come out in this game, and he was shooting with incredible confidence. He came out and was looking for his shot. He was taking difficult shots. He wasn't afraid to put the ball up, and he got into a rhythm, and TCU started to look for him at the three-point line. And if he can continue to shoot the ball like this, and we even saw it in the Texas game, even though TCU lost the game, Chuck O'Bannon had 12 points and hit some shots from the perimeter in that game. If he can continue to shoot the ball like he has over these last couple of games, it's going to be a huge difference maker for a team that's going to be going into the NCAA tournament now without their biggest big body in Eddie Lampkin.
Yeah, and the question of whether TCU should have gotten a 5 seed or this 6 seed or any of that, I think ended up everyone kind of around TCU in that seeding kept winning as well. So TCU didn't really get that opportunity to move up. And I think really as this bracket kind of shaped out, I think maybe TCU is better off in a 6 than in that 5 spot. It sets up for maybe a more difficult second round game if everyone gets there. If you end up having to play Gonzaga in the second round or any 3 seed in a second round, that's more difficult. But looking at these 12 seeds that are matching up with these 5 seeds, I think I'd almost generally prefer to play a very disappointing a high major Power 6 team that had a down season but snuck into the tournament than one of these high level mid-major teams that has a way to come out and get you. I think those 12-5 upsets are so common because that's where, you know, in this bracket here, we've got Drake and College of Charleston and Oral Roberts and VCU. Thus far, none of those teams have actually pulled off the upset. But I think those are more dangerous teams set up for a scarier matchup than the 11 seeds that made this tournament. So I don't know. Maybe that's crazy. But in any case, TCU ends up the 6th seed. Second game of the Big 12 tournament, TCU gets Texas, who did get past Oklahoma State in that opening round game. And that loss for the Cowboys ended up knocking them out of the tournament field. Oklahoma State ended up listed as the first team out of the NCAA tournament, which is unfortunate. It would have been pretty cool for the Big 12 to have had 8 teams in. Obviously 7 with 70% of the conference getting in is really impressive, but it would have been kind of cool to get up to that 8. Would have been even more so. But Texas versus TCU, Texas didn't have Timmy Allen. Certainly the broadcast team had they loved showing him and talking about him.
Love on the broadcast. Oh my goodness!
He was doing his best Drake at a Raptors game impression. He was jumping up and down, screaming at people off the bench, swirling towels over his head, and that's great. I guess good for him. He got a lot of airtime off while in street clothes during this game, but TCU was unable to take advantage of his absence or of a game that was there for the taking. Texas held a lead and held that lead throughout the game. TCU was never able to, that lead never grew to double digits, but it also never got within 4. So TCU was never able to fully close that gap throughout this contest. And following one of the best shooting performances of the season, just a really bad shooting performance to follow it up. And TCU ends up dropping that game to Texas, who went on to win the tournament championship there over Kansas in Kansas City. I don't know what to go from here. I keep thinking that Texas is kind of a fraud, but they keep on winning, and they won again today against Colgate, and they could set up for a long run through March that includes a Big 12 tournament championship. Russ, what's your takeaway from the Texas contest?
When I watched that game, and I watched the entire game between TCU and Texas, and I actually just got done watching this game that they played against Colgate, and I feel like with Texas, what gets overlooked a little bit is they have really good scorers in the backcourt with Marcus Carr and Jabari Rice, but and even with Timmy Allen in the front court, they have a couple guys that I think are overlooked and have made a really big impact in the last couple of games. Dylan Dessou has some big time length. I mean, he was unguardable, frankly, in this TCU game. Xavier Cork could not guard that man. I mean, with his length, he was hitting close range floaters around the basket. He was showing good touch around the rim, and in a game where really Marcus Carr wasn't much of a factor. Of course, Timmy Allen's not playing. It was the two big guys, Dylan Dessou, and I can't remember who the other guy is. It's not his name's escaping me, but they have some front court players with a lot of length that have made a big difference in the last few games, especially on the glass. And if you remember the last time TCU and Texas played, TCU crushed the Longhorns on the glass. I mean, at one point I think it was 16-2 in favor of TCU, but this time around, Texas did a much better job on the glass, and frankly, I thought both teams played really good defense in this game, particularly on the perimeter, and it just felt like this was a game where TCU was in it the whole time. Every time the Frogs got within 4 or 5 points, a couple plays would happen where you'd have a turnover and a missed shot, or a couple of missed shots, or a 50-50 ball.
Marcus Carr would hit a 3.
A 50-50 ball bounces Texas's way, or jump ball, possession arrow Texas. Just things like that where TCU couldn't find that 8-0 run or that 10-2 run to take over the lead and maybe force the Longhorns to burn a timeout and think about it. They just couldn't really break through. But I think you have to be happy with how TCU defended in this game. The guys that you didn't want to have beat you really didn't. It wasn't really Rice or Carr. It was the front court, led by Dylan Dessou, who just now had a really impressive game against Colgate. And I think if Texas is going to go far, and I have Texas in my Final Four, facing off against Kansas in that side of the bracket, I think it's the front court guys. If they continue to play like they have over the last week or so, combined with the experience and scoring they have in the backcourt with guys like Carr and Hunter and Rice, Texas is an extremely dangerous team. And so I think you have to be happy with the effort from TCU in this game, but just came up a little bit short there.
Yeah, maybe shows a little bit of the ceiling for the Horned Frogs in a game where Jabari Rice goes 0 for 7 on 3-pointers. I think that is a credit to the defensive effort out there, but Dylan Dessou was just dominant, and Christian Bishop was dominant. Mm-hmm. And, I think so Jabari Rice in this game against Colgate was 7 for 10 on 3-pointers. So for TCU to hold him to 0 made field goals or 3-point field goals on 7 attempts, it was a good defensive performance that just came up short. And, I think maybe that leads us into what's next for the Frogs is how does TCU match up with Arizona State? I kind of don't like being the recipient of one of the play-in game entrants. I think there's, I guess there's rest versus rust question of the play-in winner has a win under their belt and feels like they're on a roll, and Arizona State dominated that game against Nevada. And, I think there's some, as fake as momentum is, I think there is some confidence that builds for a team going into its second game of the tournament, where TCU is just opening its first. But then again, they just had to play a couple days ago. They had to take another flight out of Dayton to get to Denver. It's a lot of, they probably didn't have to expend a whole lot of energy because they ran away with that game. And I guess to talk about their performance against Nevada, they, similar to how TCU shot the lights out against Kansas State, Arizona State had its best shooting performance of the season in that first 4 victory in Dayton over Nevada. They are one of these, again, similar to TCU, one of the worst three-point shooting, sub 300 in the country, shooting approximately like 31% from three-pointers for the season. And at one point they were shooting like 70% at near halftime. They ended up like 58% for the game, but an explosion of offense from a team that's not their game. Typically, according to, all the metrics and all the statistics, they're much more of a defensive based team that controls the game at the rim and does not allow a lot of made 2-point baskets, and plays into low scoring contests. And I think there is a little bit of danger in that for the Frogs, where TCU has been, at least, maybe it's just we watch too much of them, but it feels like they've been getting absolutely destroyed at the rim the last few games, getting shots blocked at a very high rate, missing short shots, missing layups, missing dunks, and it's really cost the Frogs. And now they're matching up a team who that may be the thing that they do best. So it's definitely something to watch. I'm trying to pull up their roster here now, but they have one guy who's just an elite shot blocker down there in the post, and with no Eddie Lampkin, no real threat down there to pull him away from the basket, I think TCU might have a tough time scoring on these Sun Devils.
Yeah, I looked up their roster as well, and the player I think you might be referring to is Warren Washington. He's a 7-foot center, 7-foot forward, averages I think 10 and 6, 10 points and 6 rebounds a game, and may not necessarily be a featured player for them, but that's a big size advantage against the TCU team that's going to be starting 6'9", 220-pound forward in Xavier Cork, who frankly has not been the most consistent player this year. I think he's had his moments for sure on the offensive end. He's been able to score on dunks and putbacks, but has been inconsistent in the rebounding category and has had a really hard time with some skilled post players like Dylan DeSue from Texas or Tolu Smith from Mississippi State, guys with a little bit more size, more strength, and some more finesse around the basket. So that's definitely something that worries me in this game, is Arizona State having that kind of size and length advantage down low. But the Frogs also, I think, have played a lot of minutes over the last several games with that small lineup where they pull Jacoby Coles off the bench, they run with Emmanuel Miller at the 5, and they're able to get up and down the floor and pull some of those big guys away from the basket with some forwards like Miller and Coles that can step out into the mid-range area or the 3-point line and knock down some shots. So Arizona State, I think hearing the conversations before the tournament, are they going to get in? Are they not going to get in? Like you mentioned, Anthony, I think in the past few years we've had some teams that get into the play-in games and then they win that first game and they go on a run. We saw it with Michigan a couple of years ago. I believe they were an 11 seed. Syracuse, I believe, was a play-in winner, 11 seed when they beat number 6 seed TCU back in whatever year that was, 2018 or 2019. But Arizona State may very well be that team this year that they barely get into the tournament. Some people might be upset about, why do they get in the tournament? Our team should be in. But then they go out and they blow the doors off of Nevada, and who knows? They may very well upset TCU and move into the round of 32. So it's not going to be an easy test by any means. And I think for TCU, the keys really are going to be battling on the glass. I think TCU in some of these recent games, Texas, Kansas State, really getting after the boards collectively, not just the guys on the wings, but the backcourt players. Everybody is stepping up and really attacking the glass, especially on the offensive end. So I think that's going to be an emphasis for this game, and avoiding allowing the Sun Devils to exploit that size matchup down low. I think if TCU allows Arizona State to establish the low post with Washington, it's going to be a problem, especially if the Frogs can't knock down shots. And I think, fortunately, for TCU, you brought up the season stats for the Sun Devils and how their shooting percentages. I think for the season, free throw wise, they're just under 69%. From the field, about 41%, and from three-point range, about 31%. So they're not a particularly good shooting team, much like TCU. But again, we've seen several times this season where if a team has a big low post player with a versatile skill set that they can get the ball down to consistently, that spells trouble, because it also allows that team to slow the game down. And we know the Frogs want to get out and run. They want to force turnovers on the perimeter, get out in transition, score fast, break points. So, my bracket is donezo. So I'm putting all of my effort into rooting for the Frogs at this point.
It's all about the Frogs.
Less whether or not Kansas wins at all. I could care less about who makes the Final Four. I guess I owe a thanks to Arizona and Kirk Kriisa shooting 1 for 7 for allowing me to invest all my energy now into just rooting for TCU and not really caring about what else is going on. So I'm excited for tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's, I think, the very last game that's going to tip off in the first round. Yes. It's a 9:05 tip-off. So thankfully, it's a Friday night. We'll be staying up late anyway and hoping that it'll be a good contest for sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it will be a good game. I think, it will take, I don't know, maybe that's a cliche, but it will take TCU making shots. This Arizona State defense is not going to give it to you. So TCU will have to go take it, and TCU will have to shoot better than it has from 3-point for the season. I think, one of these nights like they had against Texas, and certainly could see TCU fall. Looking at just one last thing on this before we kind of move on, but looking at some of these stats from BartTorvik.com, there's one that stands out. I think it's offensive rebound percentage allowed. So the Arizona State defense, despite being excellent in a lot of ways, they force a lot of missed shots and they block a lot of shots, but they do surrender a higher rate against sub 300 nationally of offensive rebounds. So it's something we've talked about, that TCU has not been a great rebounding team, particularly without Lampkin on the court. But I think it was the Kansas State game, had one of those elite offensive rebounding games. Emmanuel Miller kind of goes crazy. Damian Ball can make it happen. probably need a little bit more from Xavier Cork on that end. But if TCU is able to take advantage of that, where, if they are missing shots, that you're picking up those loose balls and returning them into the basket for points. So I think it'll be a close contest. Most places have this as a, 2-3 point projected game. So we could be in for some excitement late night to close the first round of the NCAA tournament, keep the madness rolling. If TCU were to advance, they would be faced up with the winner of the Gonzaga Grand Canyon matchup. The 3 seed there is Gonzaga, and that is a huge challenge. Gonzaga as a 3 seed is a really tough draw, and Drew Timme in his 15th season of college basketball.
Future Shanghai Shark Drew Timme. I'm already. I mean, we're not trying to look too far ahead, obviously, but a TCU Gonzaga matchup would be super exciting for multiple reasons. But number one, I want to see what Drew Timme would do against TCU. I feel like with his post skills and his ability to score,
he should dominate.
I feel like he would dominate for sure. But I also feel like Gonzaga's, they have some guards that have been a part of the program there for a while, like Julian Strother and Rossier Bolton. But I don't think they have the same kind of freshman standouts that they've had in the past, like a Jalen Suggs, and they don't have much explosive scoring out of the backcourt. I feel like they do really rely on Drew Timme. He's of course he's been kind of their go-to guy, but they've also had big time performances from a Chet Holmgren or an Andrew Nemhard or a Jalen Suggs the last couple of years. I don't know if they have that same kind of shooting firepower this year. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but
well, and that's why they're a 3 instead of a 1. I mean, they've been a 1 or a 2 seed for however many years running. They've been dominant, and this year they've been less dominant, but they're still very, very dangerous too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for TCU, I like TCU's backcourt matchup with Gonzaga. I think even with Drew Timme likely going off for 25 to 30 points, I think with Mike Miles and Damian Baugh and some of these guys coming off the bench, I think the Frogs could definitely hang with Gonzaga in this matchup. They would have to figure out a way. I would honestly be okay with just sending a double every time Drew Timme gets the ball. If Rossier Bolton or Anton Watson or Julian Strother beat you, then so be it. But do not let the man with the headband rock your world, because otherwise it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, it sure would be nice to go ahead and send Drew Timme off to the retirement home in style. That would be fun for the Horned Frogs. But that is another conversation for another day. TCU will first have to get through the Arizona State Sun Devils Friday late night on True TV. So find out where True TV is on your cable box, or
if you've watched Impractical Jokers on cable television, you probably know what True TV is. I hope you have, because it's an awesome show. Shameless Impractical Jokers plug, but yes, True TV, last game of the first round. Should be fun.
Some other just quick things on the tournament. I should have pulled this up already. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Big 12 outlook. As you know, throughout the regular season, Big 12 was very clearly, very obviously the best conference in every metric across the board in college basketball. But, obviously West Virginia takes a loss. Kansas and Texas stroll to easy wins. How many teams in the, Sweet 16, how many of these teams are going to continue advancing beyond this first weekend, do you think?
I think in my bracket I had Baylor, Kansas State, Texas, and Kansas all my Sweet 16. I think I had Kansas State losing to Marquette. Marquette is just a extremely talented team, really tough team in that league. And then Baylor on the other side. I'm trying to remember who that. Oh, it would have been, I think,
I
Arizona.
think
It
Creighton.
would have been Arizona. So yeah, Creighton. Um, I really like Baylor and Kansas State's chances to get into the Sweet 16. And I mean, Kansas looked awesome today. Texas looked really good. I mean, Colgate brought it made like within 7 to 9 points on a couple different occasions, but Texas shot the ball really well tonight. Kansas almost put up 100. Um, I think the Big 12 is going to wind up being very well represented, and I think between Baylor, Kansas State, Kansas, and Texas, they're all in different regions. So a all Big 12 Final Four is not out of the realm of possibility, especially with Arizona now being out. If Baylor can get past these first couple rounds and beat whoever they would have to beat instead of Arizona,
Yeah.
you would get a matchup there potentially with Alabama, Kansas State, if they're somehow able to get hot, Keontae Johnson and those guys, and maybe they pull off a big upset over Marquette. I mean, who knows? But I think from what we've seen so far, should be 3-0 from the Big 12. I don't know how you blow that game if you're West Virginia. I felt like you were controlling that game, 16-4 run to start the game. You have an 8-point lead also in the second half, and just can't close out the deal. But I think the Big 12 is going to wind up being pretty well represented. I was very tempted to pick against Iowa State just because I know they've been kind of scuffling recently. I think they've lost 7 of their last 10 games, but I was not impressed whatsoever with Pittsburgh or Mississippi State. And I felt like Pittsburgh was probably going to win because Mississippi State is just a terrible shooting team. But I think you have to be happy so far with how the Big 12, the top dogs in the Big 12 have looked so far. That's for sure.
Yeah, the Kansas State thing, I think Kansas State, if they end up getting to that spot where they're playing Marquette or Michigan State or whomever in the Sweet 16, I think they take that and continue moving forward and could make a really deep run. But I would worry about them matching up with Kentucky in the second round. I can see Kentucky's the type of team that can take it to Kansas State. I think so. That's where I would see potentially Kansas State tripping up, because otherwise I think they can take Marquette. I think they can take if they end up with Purdue, I think Purdue takes Kansas State. So that may be as far as it goes for the Wildcats. And I totally agree on Iowa State. I think maybe there's a chance that if it had been Mississippi State, that's a worse matchup for the way that Iowa State plays. They're both kind of plodding, and Iowa State not as good at stopping those big men like Tolu Smith. But either way, I think Iowa State's in a pretty good spot. Texas is gonna continue to roll. I don't think they could go pretty far. And then Baylor, yeah, now it's just wide open for Baylor. So they can't lose this first game, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think they have a walkover at all. Creighton was a preseason top 10 team if they face them in the second round. So I don't know. I think it's fun to, I don't think Big 12 fans are like SEC fans in the way that we chant the conference name.
It just means more. It just means more sometimes.
Yeah, the exploits of the Crimson Tide do not make Tennessee fans. I don't know. For some reason, the SEC just loves to root for each other. I don't know what's with that. I'm totally happy if Baylor and Kansas State and Iowa State and Texas all lose their next game. That's totally fine if TCU keeps winning. That doesn't really say anything about TCU. But in any case, I do think Big 12 is set up to have a potentially pretty fun rest of this tournament, the last version of this. And of course, Houston, I think they're playing right now. I don't know how they're doing, but as the 1 seed, has a very good chance of going and winning the national championship in their home city before heading into the Big 12 next season. So exciting times for the conference. let's see, we contained that to like under 45 minutes. I'm surprised. Anything else on the NCAA tournament? I think we're just excited for this basketball. Today was an excellent day. Tomorrow's going to be a great day. It's the best time to just sit and watch basketball all day while doing whatever's happening throughout the day.
Yeah, we have a few more upsets for sure coming. I think I was at my office. I was working on a story earlier today, and I heard my boss in his office be like, "Oh my gosh!" And it was the Furman play with Furman, the Fur
Furman
people,
shot,
the Paladins. I'm calling them the Fur people though. Furman. I don't know if you saw that play, but Virginia.
Oh, I was watching.
They had a timeout. They had one timeout left, and for whatever reason, Tony Bennett doesn't call a timeout. Clark, I think, was the player that had the ball.
Kihei Clark,
just
yep.
decides to Tom Brady it, looking for Mike Evans deep down the field. Man chucks the ball to center court, and it gets intercepted, and then the stones to be able to just pop that shot from the 3-point line like that and sink it, and also credit to
shout out Nashville, Tennessee.
Also credit to the broadcast. The call was awesome on that play. That made the clip so much better, but just a terrible. Frankly, I think you could argue that was a choke job by Virginia. Virginia should have been able to close that out, especially with the timeout. And then Princeton, I think they mentioned on the broadcast as well, this is the third year in a row, I think, where a 15 seed has knocked off a 2 seed. And like we were talking about before we started recording, if any of the 2 seeds were going to lose, I didn't think it would be Arizona, obviously, because I had them in my title game. But I thought UCLA, with the injury to Jalen Clark and the other injuries they've been dealing with, maybe they catch a body early in the tournament. But gosh, that's just got to be. I couldn't imagine what the Arizona fans are going through right now. I feel like that's just got to be a huge letdown after what happened last year in the tournament as well. It seems like it's been a continuing trend of early exits for Arizona in the NCAA tournament. So couldn't have happened to a better group of fans, I guess. But yeah, that's the way it goes in March Madness sometimes, baby. That's how it goes.
Yeah, it's just a principle of brackets that just don't trust the Arizona Wildcats. Just, if they end up winning the national championship, then, you can be wrong. But most times you're going to be right by just staying away from them. So lesson learned for you next time if you had them in the championship game. But
fade. I got to fade Arizona. I got to fade the Mountain West. And I got to start fading the Big Ten, too, because I picked Illinois. I kind of felt like I had to pick Illinois. It's my home state. Why not? But I picked Iowa too. Didn't pick Northwestern. Of course, they're the team that winds up winning. And my luck has just been trashed to start off today. It's been a little annoying, not gonna lie. I put the time and the effort into trying to make a good bracket and doing the research, and like you mentioned, you probably did your research as well, and you're getting smoked by your 7-year-old. That's how it goes in March Madness, man.
That's how it works. Well, at least I'm still alive for today on our survivor pool at frogsawar.com. I went ahead and just took Kansas today so that I could make sure to survive at least through one day of this thing. But that's a really fun game. It's one of my favorite things that I do every year through Frogs of War. I think this is the 5th or 6th year doing it. And it was a huge turnout of folks, by far the most entries this season. So thanks to everyone who signed up for that. Sorry for those of you who are already out that took Arizona. That's a tough look, but a few of you took West Virginia, but my thought there was Kansas was definitely going to win this game, but was most likely going to be facing Arkansas, which turns out they will be facing Arkansas, and that's going to be a really good game, really exciting to watch. But certainly possible that Kansas does not come away with that win. I did have Xavier for the Friday game, and I'm already nervous about it, facing Kennesaw State. So I watch out for the Owls there. I'm pretty nervous about it. I wanted to. I normally would have taken Baylor. I don't know why I didn't. And that just serves as I can root for Baylor once and just like, okay, they can take care of this cupcake game and move on, and then I can root against them the rest of the way, but ended up taking Xavier. We'll see. So yeah, thanks to everybody who signed up for that, and we did get offered. So the winner of that this year will get a free T-shirt of your choice. Hopefully, if you're a TCU fan, you pick a TCU T-shirt. But Breaking T reached out, and so there's a prize on the line this year. Normally, it's just bragging rights. You get some internet points, but there is a little bit of
you get some little bit of points.
Yeah, it goes on your permanent record online, but you can sport your Breaking T-shirt if you end up winning this season. So that's exciting. I think that's all I have for basketball. Anything else you want to touch on NCAA tournament?
Nope, I think we pretty much covered all the bases. And so speaking of bases, let's get into some baseball stuff here.
Well
and I don't know how much of the baseball you followed over the weekend or during the week. Another pretty disappointing midweek game for TCU, and playing San Diego over the weekend as well. This is a series that we talked about last week, and a team that got off to a pretty good start, San Diego, but was on a pretty lengthy losing streak. And we felt like this was a series that TCU needed to sweep to start playing with some confidence going into Big 12 play with Oklahoma coming up. And losing 14-2 on Friday was not the way to do that. This game was over before it began. I mean, it was a complete blowout. Ryan Vanderhei got the start, and he's been really good to his credit throughout the season, but this was by far his worst performance of the season. TCU pitchers collectively walked 9 batters in this game, and this was a game where the defense, which we've talked about quite a bit, the defense has really let TCU down in multiple games so far, but this was just the pitching. I mean, the pitching was not there for TCU in this game, and neither was the offense. And really, the offense was pretty erratic throughout the weekend. You had some opportunities with guys on base where players weren't able to deliver, and we're not going to be scoring 7, 8, 9 runs every single game like we've seen in earlier matchups, but TCU bouncing back to the Frogs' credit. They win 3-1 on Saturday and 5-4 on Sunday. They overcame a late little rally in the 9th inning. I think San Diego scored 2 runs in the 9th inning, and Luis Rodriguez, who pitched 2 innings on Saturday to earn the save, actually had to come on and kind of in emergency mop-up duty and got the final out of that game on Sunday to earn the save as well. So back-to-back saves for him, and I don't even know if he was supposed to play this weekend. Kendall Rogers, who does tremendous college baseball reporting, talked about some pitchers who are dealing with some injuries right now. Garrett Wright, Luke Savage. Luis Rodriguez apparently tweaked his back and was questionable to pitch over the weekend, but he did pitch, and he pitched really well. Cole Klecker, another freshman, is seemingly penciled into the weekend rotation now, along with Ryan Vanderhei and Cam Brown. He was tremendous on Saturday. He pitched 7 innings, only gave up 1 run, a couple hits, had great command throughout the day, and has been a kind of a godsend for TCU, a team that we felt coming in. We had Ryan Vanderhei, we had Cam Brown. Who else is going to step up and be a consistent starter? And the freshmen as a whole have pitched a lot, but Cole Klecker has been the best freshman so far. He's been outstanding, and he has seemingly locked up a weekend rotation role moving forward. So I'm sure the Frogs will be leaning on him again as they get ready for Big 12 play against Oklahoma. But some other notable things from the weekend, TCU hit 3 home runs on Sunday. Braden Taylor had 1, Austin Davis had 1, and Curtis Byrne, who he actually got a warning from the umpire for a bat flip after he hit his home run. I didn't know that could actually happen
Too excited.
in college baseball, but Those are just umpires being umpires, I guess. Don't let the players have fun. Don't let them show
No
any
fun.
emotion. You got to respect the game, right? But a good result, I guess, all the way around. They win 2 out of 3 games. It's a little disappointing that they didn't get the sweep, and the loss on Friday was, pretty brutal. And unfortunately, TC went out to Texas State on Tuesday and lost that game 8-4. So TC right now is 9-7, still ranked number 11 in the country, which frankly I'm a little surprised. TCU is still ranked that high. I think when you look at some of these losses, you lose a game to UT Arlington during the week. Last week, you lose this game to Texas State. You lose a game over the weekend by 12 runs to San Diego. I felt like they might have fallen down closer to the 15-17 range, but I think they're still getting a lot of credit for some of their wins earlier in the season against teams like Arkansas and Vanderbilt. So we'll see if the Frogs can step up this weekend against Oklahoma. Again, losing 8-4 on Tuesday against Texas State. Braden Sloan started that game, freshman left-hander. He's been kind of the midweek starter for TCU this year. Had a couple really good starts to begin the season, and since then has had back-to-back really rough outings. So not sure if they need to make a change there. I know Sam Stautenborough, the transfer from Cal, has pitched pretty well in relief. He's been kind of a long reliever, so maybe they give him a look. Jake Dewar, who's a freshman, went 2 for 3 in this game on Tuesday, had his first collegiate RBI, so congratulations to him. But 9-7 overall, and I think the Frogs got to start picking up some momentum here. We've talked about the defense being pretty poor so far. The offense has been a little inconsistent in terms of run scoring, and the pitching, the freshmen, have stepped up as much as they can, but got to get some of these veteran guys healthy, got to get them going. River Ridings still hasn't really been much of a factor this year. Hopefully Garrett Wright can get back and take on a role at the back end of the bullpen. Cohen Feezer, who's a really talented sophomore pitcher, hasn't pitched over the last 4 or 5 games. I'm not sure if there's an injury going on there. And Hunter Hodges, the transfer from Wilmington, hasn't pitched at all. So I think I'm assuming he's injured, but would really like to see TCU come out with a good showing this weekend and start to get this season back on track a little bit.
Yeah, on the rankings thing, I mean, I think TCU's early season wins are going to continue to carry a whole lot of weight with voters. I mean, those are big time wins. Losing probably the UT Arlington loss is probably the worst one on the resume, but still won this series against San Diego, who is potentially a conference winner, has an opportunity to make the tournament, and losing at Texas State that's not going to hurt you. That's a high level team that will very likely be playing in the NCAA tournament postseason. So I think I keep trying to temper the I don't know if disappointment's the right word, but we haven't, with those early wins, we felt like, okay, this team might be something super special, and right now they are really good, which is still really good. And so, I think maybe our expectations, or maybe just speaking for myself, but it feels like the TCU fan expectations have jumped a level with that early success, and anything less than excellence is seen as not good enough, which is fair. But headed into Big 12 play, we'll see how this goes. I mean, Oklahoma was the hottest team in the country last year, running through in the Big 12 tournament and through the NCAA tournament and through into Omaha. So I think this is a huge test right away in Norman. If you go and win this series, it really sets up the rest of the season to continue to give you everything that you hope for TCU baseball. So Huge games coming up this weekend, and you can kind of put this early season kind of slog that they've been going through here behind the Frogs and move on going forward. So moving on to some of the other programs on campus, I was excited. I got the opportunity to go see two number one programs this weekend, going to campus to see the TCU beach volleyball perform and TCU men's tennis, both ranked number one in their respective sports. The tennis team stomped on number 34 UCLA, winning another sweep, a 7-0 sweep, really dominant fashion, undefeated on the season. Next up, back on the purple courts in Fort Worth, is number 51 Illinois. So I don't know what more we could say about TCU tennis other than go out and watch them, because they are elite, and they're just playing at an extremely high level right now. Coach Roditi has them firing on all cylinders and headed into a pretty difficult stretch that, I think looking at their schedule here, after Illinois is Texas. So the team that TCU took down in the indoor championship will come to Fort Worth on Wednesday next week. So really big contests ahead for TCU men's tennis. And I don't know what more to say other than they're just dominant, and they continue to dominate all comers, and every single player on this squad, the roster runs deep, and they're not unbeatable, but they just never stop coming at you. So, some of these matches, they may fall behind a little bit, but TCU's never out of any contest on the tennis courts, and just playing at a very high level.
Yeah, and being 14-0 on the season and having a lot of home matches coming up. I know they have some tough opponents, but I want to say it's 4 or 5 home matches in a row coming up after Illinois. So anyone who's around campus, there are plenty of opportunities coming up over the next couple of weeks to go and check this team out. I think every singles player in the starting lineup for TCU might be ranked at the moment, and they have 2 or 3 doubles pairs that are ranked as well. So they have some really good veteran talent, guys like Luke Famba and Jake Fearnley, but some of the young guys like JPJ and Sebastian Gorsny are taking down some really quality players early on in their careers, ranked players during the indoor season, and they played a huge role in solidifying this lineup and allowing TCU to be so dominant at the indoor nationals and being number one in the country, having so many ranked players. I think TCU right now has to be the favorite to win the outdoor national championship, assuming everybody stays healthy and they continue to play the way they are right now. I don't see any reason why they couldn't do that. I mean, they're so dominant in doubles right now. I don't think they've dropped a single doubles point in any of their 14 matches this year. So it's really impressive stuff. And Coach Roditi is a super awesome guy, extremely outgoing, straight shooter. The Roditi reports, if you read him after the tennis matches, he'll tell you exactly, how the matches went and, what the adjustments are moving forward. So it's a lot of fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, and I was definitely looking at an old ranking. So Illinois is actually number 19 in the country. So 19 this weekend, then midweek against Texas, who is number 3. And then let's see, USC is number 8. So yeah, big time matches. All of those are at home over there on campus. So yeah, like you said, go out there and check them out because it's free. and it's totally worth your time. The other free event on campus that they put on a really good show is the TCU Beach Volleyball, which they play there outside the rec center. They had another dominant weekend, which included 2 defeats of number 4 LSU, probably TCU's, top rival. They play in the same conference in beach volleyball, so they do play quite a bit throughout the season, and will almost certainly both be in postseason play together. And TCU took it to them. It was a really great atmosphere. The LSU, I guess, I don't know why I thought it wouldn't be this way, but LSU brought a whole bunch of fans. They had like tailgating set up. They had they brought a crowd out there to outside the rec center. So it was a good time, and TCU came away with wins there and with another undefeated weekend, including wins over, I think, Southern Miss and Texas A&M, something, Kingswood,
Kingsville or something like that. Yeah.
I had not heard of that school before, but in any case, TCU, another undefeated weekend, and continues to be ranked number 1 nationally, and has a really tough schedule ahead. So after coming off that weekend with 2 wins over number 4 LSU, we'll get USC, which is number 2 in the country, and they also feature contests against number 14 Florida International and number 15 Florida Atlantic. So another we've got over at frogsofwar.com, we've got recaps going up after weekly recaps of their performances, and it's just another program that's super exciting to follow. They're another really talented team that goes out and performs at an elite level for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, you know what? You mentioned LSU bringing a caravan of fans to the rec to watch the matchup. I think that doesn't really surprise me, because going all the way back to 2013, and granted, this is football, and I know football is an entirely different animal, but when TCU and LSU played at Cowboy Stadium for that matchup early in the season, gosh, there must have been like 75% LSU fans in that stadium. And the tailgates, you drove by Cowboy Stadium, all the parking lots, and it was just a sea of purple and yellow. There were a ridiculous amount of LSU fans there. So they travel. It would not surprise me if they travel for every sport, because I know their baseball program is awesome too. They are very passionate about their Tigers, and I respect that. They do it big for whatever sport it is, and that's how I think it should be for college sports.
Yeah, luckily, unlike that football game, I didn't have any LSU fans screaming Tiger bait or like all of that stuff. I guess I did have my kids with me, so maybe it's a different situation than when I was walking tailgates back in whatever that was, 2012, 2013. But yeah, they were very, very nice fans, but a lot of them, and they were having a good time. So that was a lot of fun. What else did we have? We had TCU Rifle finished up NCAA tournament play, came up as the runner-up, second place in the national championships there. And TCU golf, men's golf, took a golf tournament, came in first in a tournament out in Phoenix, the Grand Canyon Invitational, took a team victory out there. So, TCU men's golf maybe going ahead and setting the table for after Grand Canyon upsets Gonzaga tomorrow night, and TCU takes down Arizona State. It's setting up a that's the preview is that TCU men's golf went ahead and took down the Antelopes, and all of their identical logos and everything to TCU. Those GCU logos always throw me off every time.
Yeah, shout out to TCU Golf for going out there and taking the Copyright University Invitational out there at the I guess they have their own golf course too. They played at the GCU golf course in Phoenix. So a really impressive performance. They shot 17 under par as a team. Wound up beating a couple other teams by 1 stroke to win the tournament, and it was their first tournament win of the season. Their highest recent finish before that, I believe, was a 4th place finish at a tournament out on the West Coast. So TCU Golf getting a little, and also speaking of TCU Golf, how about Tom Hoagie putting on a master class at the Players Championship? I wrote up a little bit of a story about this on frogsofwar.com, but to kind of set the stage for a moment, Tom Hoagie was looking like he wasn't going to make the cut. He joked in a press conference, I think, about how he was already booking a flight home because he didn't think he was going to make it to the weekend, but he birdied to get to 2 under par, which was the number you needed to make the cut. So he made the cut by 1 stroke and then came out on Saturday and was just a target finder with his irons. His iron play, I was watching a lot of the players over the weekend, and he was just money inside of 150 yards. His irons were tremendous. His putting was awesome. He made 10 birdies on his round Saturday, 5 on the back, 5 on the front, and closed out a 62 with a birdie to set a new course record at TPC Sawgrass. And he played so well that he ultimately finished in a tie for 3rd after he shot, I think, a 2 under par round on Sunday. So congratulations to Tom Hoagie pulling in over $1 million worth of earnings just for that tournament alone, and also for setting a new course record. I think that's really cool for someone who had a terrible round on Thursday. I think he shot a 78 on Thursday and just had to grind back. Again, barely making the cut, and then going out there and shooting a 62 it's what I've enjoyed about watching golf over the last several months. Is there's so many really good players, and you obviously have your guys like Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas and Scotty Scheffler, who's on fire, John Rahm, guys who are going to be in it for every big tournament. But on occasion, you have some guys like Tom Hoagie who just pull out a masterclass of a round. So it's really exciting to see. So shout out to TCU Men's Golf, shout out to Tom Hoagie, and shout out to the rifle team as well. There was their 17th straight NCAA championship appearance. Struggled a little bit, I think, during the small bore competition. They were in 6th out of 8 teams after that first day, but had a really good performance during the air rifle competition and worked their way all the way into 2nd. So for a team like men's tennis and beach volleyball that was number 1 ranked in the country for nearly the entire season, awesome things happening at TCU Athletics for the non-rev sports. So continue to follow us on frogsofwar.com and on the podcast here. We're going to continue to bring coverage for all of those sports and keep everybody up to date on all the great happenings that are going on with TCU sports.
Yeah, for sure. We appreciate all the support, everyone here listening, everyone who follows us on the website, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook, everywhere. And really excited for big time basketball Friday night against Arizona State. Hopefully we're back here next time talking to you about maybe a couple of TCU victories. With that, we'll close it here. Go Frogs.